If you're listening to this from the comfort of a soft bed beneath clean sheets, with your phone charging gently by your side, well, brace yourself. Because we're going to take all of that away. Tonight, you're not a modern human, not even close. You're not someone with a toothbrush or central heating or a Google Calendar. You're a woman in Victorian London, and not just any woman, you're what polite society would call fallen and what the law never quite dared to name. You live in a respectable brothel, one of the nicer ones, with just enough coal for heat and just enough silence for shame. But don't worry. You're safe here, safe in this story. You're just going to walk in someone else's shoes for a while, shoes that pinch leak and don't belong to you. So if you're still awake, go ahead, take a slow breath in, let it out even slower, and sink just a little deeper into your pillow. And if you're already drifting off, you're doing it right. We're not here to stress your brain, we're here to glide through time together, one candle flickering scene at a time. And hey, if you're enjoying this journey through the forgotten corners of history, it would mean a lot if you'd tap that like or follow button and tell me where in the world are you listening from and what time is it right now. I'm always amazed by how many people fall asleep to this in different corners of the world. One brothel, infinite time zones. Ready, good. Let's begin. You wake to the sound of boots. Not yours, never yours. They're thudding somewhere down the stairs, then pausing, then thudding again. Someone's delivering coal, probably Mrs. Winters' nephew. You think his name is Jack. Or Jacob. You've never been sure, and asking feels too forward. It's early pre-dawn. The room is dim lit only by the pale gray light sneaking through the single-paned window. You pull the wool blanket higher. Its scratchy smells faintly of lavender water and something darker underneath dampness maybe, or old breath. The mattress beneath you is made of horsehair, lumpy, cold. Not cruel, just indifferent. Like most things in your world, your nightgown clings to your legs. The air inside the room is sharp, dry, and still. You curl your toes against the cold and wait. There's no rush to rise. You know the rhythm of the house. The others are still sleeping, probably. Emily murmurs in her sleep sometimes. Lily turns over just once. You've memorized it all. The wallpaper is floral, or was. Faded, now curled at the corners, too tired to lie flat. The fireplace across from the bed is unlit. Coal is rationed. Mornings don't get heat. There's a pitcher and basin on the small wooden table. You push the blanket back inch by inch, feeling your limbs complain. You cross the room barefoot, no slippers today. The soles came loose last week. The floorboards are cold but familiar. You break the thin skin of ice on the basin surface with your fingers. It stings. That's how you wash fast, quiet, practical. The water isn't dirty, but you don't trust it. You've stopped trusting many things. Still, you splash your face, brace yourself, and begin to move. Slowly. Victorian London isn't quite awake yet, but it's humming softly. The sound of hooves in the street below. A distant vendor's cart. A church bell that's always a little offbeat. This is your world, half in shadow, half in routine, and entirely borrowed. You dry your face with a small, stiff towel and begin the daily ritual of making yourself ready. It isn't vanity. It's survival. You glance at the looking glass. The silver is peeling at the edges, turning your reflection ghost-like. You touch your cheek, it's fuller than it was when you worked as a seamstress. Regular meals make a difference. A fringe historical detail perhaps, but worth noting, many brothel women had better access to food and medical care than the average maid or laundress. You eat. Not well, not richly, but consistently. But the eyes, those change. The longer you stay, the more they shift. Less wide, more watchful. You learn to see in flickers, in glances, in silences. No one teaches you this. The job does. You reach for your corset already laid out from last night. It's worn, but intact. Laces fraying a little at the top. You fasten it slowly with practiced fingers. It squeezes, reshapes, instructs your posture. There's no room for slouching. Not in your job. Not in your life. You dress in layers linen chemise petticoat bodice skirt. Everything serves a purpose. Not just appearance, but insulation modesty structure. The gown today is pale gray respectable. Not too fancy. Not too plain. Mrs. Cartwright approves of grays. You pin your hair up neatly. You smooth the flyaways with spit and hope. Lily keeps a pomade, but it's expensive, and you haven't the tips for it this week. Downstairs, a kettle whistles. There will be tea. Actual tea, not the roasted chicory nonsense most working-class homes endure. Cartwright allows for that. Little luxuries that separate this house from the others. And they matter. Especially to the men who arrive pretending this is affection, not transaction. You exhale slowly. The worst of the morning is over. Outside, London is gray and grimy but steady. This is 1862, remember? The city is choked with chimney smoke, cobbled streets still slick with last night's rain. Queen Victoria sits at Osborne House, unaware of your name, unaware of your hunger, your strength, your habit of washing your neck twice. Once for appearance, once for luck. You stretch your back slowly. Bones pop. Ribs shift. Your feet throb a little from the steps you haven't yet taken. But you're awake now. And dressed. And upright. And in this world that already counts as victory. The first thing you feel is cold. Not the kind of cold that nudges you to pull the blanket up. No, this is the deep, quiet kind, the sort that settles in your bones and politely informs you that the fireplace downstairs didn't earn its wages last night. You curl up instinctively, knees drawn to your chest, trying to hold on to what little warmth your body has managed to generate. The woolen blanket is thin, worn, smells faintly of lavender water, faintly in the way old perfume lingers on borrowed clothes. But beneath that is the undeniable scent of musty bedding and the tired remains of damp air that never truly left. Your mattress horsehair, lumpy in all the wrong places. There's one particular spring near your hip that always announces itself just before dawn. You name it Edmund. You hate Edmund. Somewhere in the corner, the wind slides through a crack in the window frame, weaving its way across the faded wallpaper like a whisper. It brushes the edge of your ear and makes you wish for one more blanket, or one fewer century. From the opposite bed, there's a rustle. Lily turns over her breath, audible in the cold. You hear the soft thunk of her arm hitting the wooden bed rail, followed by a sleepy mutter and a cough. That cough again, she's had it for a week now. Not serious, hopefully. But here, even a lingering tickle can turn into something more. The first official sound of the day arrives in the form of deliberate ascending footsteps. Thick, precise, not hurried. That's Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper. She doesn't knock. She doesn't have to. Just her boots are enough. Right on time. The day begins. You open your eyes, blinking into the gray light that's just beginning to seep through the curtains. The room is still painted in soft shadows and softer regrets. The wallpaper, once floral, now just faded peels gently at the corners. The basin by the window holds a layer of water with a film of ice across it, elegant if you're feeling poetic. Unforgiving if you're trying to wash your face. You sit up slowly, wrapping the shawl around your shoulders before stepping onto the cold floorboards. The wood feels like pressed iron beneath your soles, and the chill crawls up your ankles with eager fingers. This is London. This is 1862. And this is your morning. From downstairs, you hear a fire being poked, coal shifting. Somewhere a kettle begins to hum. The scent of something warm rises coffee if you're lucky. Real coffee is a luxury in this house, but one Mrs. Cartwright insists upon. For the girls, for the guests, for appearances, you cross the room and break the ice in the basin, with 2 fingers flinching at the sting. You splash water on your face. You don't scream, but you want to. Your breath catches, then steadies. Welcome to being awake. Your hands grope toward the pitcher for a rag to dry off. You glance at yourself in the small mirror nailed to the wall. It's cracked in one corner, distorting your reflection ever so slightly. Still, you see enough. This face. Your face. Awake before it becomes whoever you'll need it to be today. There's something disorienting about mornings here. You rise not as yourself exactly, but as the version of you that can get through the day. That version begins with clean cheeks, a pinned-up curl, and a silent nod to the wardrobe corner. The floor creaks as Lily stirs again. "What time is it?" she asks, her voice still wrapped in dreams. "Early," you murmur. "Same as always." She groans, the kind of groan that doesn't require translation. You open the window just a crack, letting in a breeze sharp enough to feel like it has opinions. Outside, the street is still sleepy. A cart rolls by its wheels, creaking under the weight of milk cans. The milkman hums to himself, off-key but cheerful. You wonder what it's like to have a job that starts early but ends before the customers arrive. The air smells like soot, like smoke, and something faintly sweet, maybe bread from the bakery on the corner. Or maybe that's wishful thinking. You close the window. Back inside, the room has taken on that in-between energy. Not night, not quite day. Not silent, not yet busy. Just the stillness before the layers go on. Corset, blouse skirts, hair, manners, voice. But that's for later. For now, it's just you, the icy water, and the smell of coal. Victorian mornings were never known for comfort. Even in nicer houses, central heating was an idea still waiting to be invented. Coal fires burned inconsistently, rooms were drafty, and insulation was more of a hopeful prayer than a structural feature. Mainstream historical fact. By 1862, most London homes, even those in the city center, relied entirely on coal and manual fireplaces for warmth. And while gas lamps had begun to replace candles in wealthier neighborhoods, many boarding houses and brothels like yours still lit their halls with nothing more than flickering lamps and the occasional firelit glow. You glance at the tiny oil lamp near the door. The flame flickers, casting strange shadows on the opposite wall. It's beautiful in a way, until it goes out. From below, you hear voices. Low, male, already. That's a surprise. Visitors usually don't come this early, but sometimes... Well, sometimes a man thinks his guilt will weigh less if the sun's not yet up. You turn to Lily. Sounds like someone's in a hurry. She opens one eye. They always are. Until they aren't. You both chuckle just barely. You pick up your corset still hanging on the peg from last night and sigh. Another day begins. Not glamorous, not dramatic. Just slow cold and very, very real. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder if the milkman ever dreams of lavender water. You doubt it? By the time the first proper shaft of winter light finds its way through the lace curtains, your hands are already at work, quiet, practiced, and certain. There's a rhythm to these mornings that doesn't require thought-only habit. The kind of routine that becomes muscle memory stitched into you by repetition, not affection. It begins with underthings cotton worn thin from washing, pulled over skin that still holds the sting of cold water. Then, the corset bone canvas and ambition cinched just tight enough to shape the waist, but not enough to rob the lungs entirely. It's a compromise like most things in this house. Corsets weren't just fashion, they were infrastructure. In 1862, even working-class women wore some form of structured support, though not always the dramatic hourglass cut you see in modern illustrations. For brothel workers especially, the silhouette had to suggest wealth without actually possessing it. Illusion was everything. With the laces tied, you layer the chemise and petticoats. The cotton is clean, if not crisp. It still carries the faint scent of last week's soap homemade, lie a sharp note under the lavender. Then, the dress itself, navy wool with a modest neckline and full skirt. Practical, respectable, dignified if you don't look too close. It's stitched and restitched in places, a quiet testament to careful mending and careful living. A decorative brooch at the collar, a gift from no one in particular, adds just enough flair to pretend at elegance. But the real labor comes next the hair. No matter how many nights you sleep on it, in braids, it never seems to do what it's supposed to. And so you comb and twist and pin and tuck fingers moving with steady certainty. Today requires volume, so the false hair comes out a coil of curls that once belonged to someone else, now repurposed into a crown of borrowed beauty. It sits atop your own hair with practiced precision. Not too high, not too bold. Just enough to say, I wake up like this, which, of course, is the most exhausting lie of all. Victorian women, especially those in your line of work, were expected to look naturally beautiful. Not painted, not theatrical. A subtle blush on the cheek was acceptable. Rice powder for the complexion, if well blended, was encouraged. But anything resembling stage makeup risked being seen as vulgar, even within a brothel. The goal was an effortless allure, though achieving it required anything but ease. There's a tiny glass jar near the mirror with rouge scraped into its corners. You dab a bit onto your cheeks, just enough to restore the color the cold has taken. Then, a touch to the lips. No lipstick, of course, just a finger smudge of color. Your eyebrows are brushed with a bit of castor oil to make them lie flat. Your lashes pinched gently between thumb and forefinger, encouraged to curl naturally. There's a vial of lavender water on the dresser. Not true perfume, which is too costly, too obvious. Just lavender diluted in spirits. A dab behind the ears, at the wrists, at the base of the throat. Enough to register when someone leans in close, but not enough to linger after they leave. You glance once more in the mirror, not to admire, but to confirm. Everything in place. Nothing too much. The illusion holds. The labor of beauty in this time and place is equal parts strategy and survival. A woman here does not just prepare her face, she prepares her persona. Each element curl scent color is part of a uniform that must whisper desire without screaming desperation. There is a quiet hierarchy in appearance, one that the clients recognize even if they'd never admit it aloud. There's also a certain satisfaction, however quiet, in knowing how to assemble yourself like this. In a world that takes so much from women, the act of self-styling, of choosing how to be seen, offers a small, strange power. You may not own the room, but you control the first impression. Downstairs, the house begins to stir in earnest. The rustle of skirts, the hum of the maid bringing up breakfast trays, the muted clink of china. You are not expected to eat with the others, yet that comes later. First appearances, first readiness. The mirror catches your eye again. You lean in, not too close. There's that look again. Composed, neutral, soft around the edges, but steady. You don't look like a woman who stood barefoot on ice this morning. You don't look like someone who sleeps in a room where you can hear every cough from the walls next door. You look like someone untouched by hardship. That's the point. A quirky detail that always amuses you. Victorian brothels, especially the respectable ones, often kept hairpieces cataloged by color and curl pattern like wigs in a backstage theater. Some even had house styles for their girls' blonde curls, for the ingenue-type smooth dark hair, for the sophisticated companion. You've always thought it funny that the same society that banned women from political meetings spent so much time engineering the right hair part. Outside, the city is beginning to shake off its sleep. Hooves clatter along cobblestones. Someone is shouting in the alley, maybe selling papers or arguing with a drunk. The fog is lifting just enough for the light to look like light again. The world is awake. You are ready. Or at least, you look ready. That's enough. As you smooth your skirt and step away from the mirror, you catch a final glance of yourself. Not the real you, perhaps, but the version built for daylight. She will carry the name, the gestures, the charm. She will smile when required, listen when appropriate, and vanish politely when dismissed. She's not the girl who shivered in the dark basin this morning, but she is the one who must walk downstairs. And so she does. The staircase creaks beneath your steps, a familiar tune in the quiet of morning. You walk slowly, heels brushing the edge of each tread, one hand gliding lightly along the banister. The wood is warm to the touch, rubbed smooth by years of careful polish, and the silent passage of countless hands before yours. The scent of beeswax lingers faintly in the air, mingling with old coal dust, stale lavender, and the hint of frying lard wafting in from the kitchen. This house from the outside could pass for almost anything: a widow's townhouse, a boarding school for girls, a small residence belonging to a particularly well-appointed governess. And that is entirely by design. Victorian brothels, especially those operating in respectable districts like Soho or Bloomsbury, prided themselves on discretion. There were no garish signs, no flashing colors, no red lanterns by the door. That myth, while romantic, belonged more to the imaginations of penny dreadfuls and pulp novels than to real life. The real trade was quiet. Quiet paid better. Quiet survived longer. The exterior of the house is respectable to the point of forgettable, brick neat but not ostentatious. Windows scrubbed, curtains properly drawn, a fresh coat of paint on the door each year, navy or dark green, nothing that might invite curiosity. The doorstep is kept swept, the iron railing free from rust. To passers-by, it looks like any other three-story home in London's crowded heart. Inside, however, the atmosphere is finely tuned. Not opulent, not vulgar, comfortably elegant. The parlor floor is arranged like that of a modest private club. Upholstered chairs with claw feet, rugs thick enough to muffle footsteps, heavy drapery that blocks both drafts and prying eyes. The lamps are gaslit but trimmed low, casting a gentle amber glow that flatters rather than exposes. Even the artwork is curated: landscapes, floral, still lifes, and the occasional Grecian urn. Nothing with figures. Nothing that hints at desire, at business, at the truth of what this house does. Only those who know, know. You pass through the front hall, now careful not to disturb the arrangement of shoes by the umbrella stand. The tiles beneath your feet are black and white marble, slightly uneven in places, but always scrubbed clean. On the wall, a small brass bell used not to summon help, but to signal that a guest has arrived. Behind it, a narrow corridor leads toward the back of the house, where the kitchen hums with quiet preparation. Mrs. Cartwright runs this place. She is not cruel, nor is she maternal. She is something in between, a woman who understands that survival in this city requires order, discipline, and the ability to say no without raising one's voice. She lives on the ground floor in the largest room with 2 windows facing the street and a fireplace that she does not share. Her door is always closed, unless she needs something. You have learned to recognize her presence by sound alone: the precise tap of heels on wood, the whisper of her skirts, the rhythmic turn of her keys as she locks the ledgers into her desk each night. Mrs. Cartwright is what the polite classes might call a proprietress. She keeps records, accurate ones. She schedules the doctor's visits, orders supplies, and negotiates discreetly with officers who agree to look the other way in exchange for silence. She pays fairly. She expects silence, promptness, and clean sheets. She tolerates no fighting and no drunkenness among the girls. In this house, she says, you are not animals. The rooms upstairs are small but maintained. Each has 2 beds, a wash basin, and a tiny wardrobe barely deep enough for a dress. You know which floorboards creak and which windows let in the least cold. You know how to fold your stockings beneath the mattress to keep them from stiffening overnight. You know how to adjust the curtain just enough to glimpse the street below without being seen. This familiarity, though born of necessity, brings a certain strange comfort. In a world where women often drifted from place to place, having a drawer of your own, even a tiny one, felt like something worth holding on to. The house is organized like a small inn. Meals served at set times, cleaning on a rota, visiting hours monitored discreetly by a girl stationed at the front window. Lily usually, who has sharp eyes and a memory for faces. Clients don't book formally. but they tend to come on schedule. Some arrive weekly, like a gentleman going to his tailor. Others drop in at irregular hours with anxious glances over their shoulders. There are no loud noises here, no shouting. Even laughter is subdued, a gentle hum behind closed doors. The walls, like the girls, know how to listen without judging. A curious fact you once overheard Mrs. Cartwright mentioned to the doctor: in some cities, such as Liverpool or Glasgow, the authorities tried to license brothels more openly, posting public health notices and weekly examinations. London, however, clung to its contradictions. It needed the trade, but didn't want to name it. And so places like this house continued to exist in plain sight, legally invisible, socially tolerated, morally ignored. It's an odd kind of invisibility that wraps around you as you make your way to the second parlor. The heavy curtains here have been drawn back just slightly, letting in the weak daylight. A vase of dried roses sits on the windowsill, not fresh, but not yet decayed. The sofa cushions have been fluffed, the teacups arranged on the tray. You straighten one of the spoons more from instinct than purpose. The details matter. They matter because they suggest refinement. Cleanliness, respectability, all illusions perhaps, but in this house, illusion is everything. Even the tea served to clients is of a better quality than you drink yourself. Salon sometimes, sweetened with a cube of sugar and served in porcelain that has no visible cracks. These small gestures matter more than anyone says aloud. They allow the men to believe they are not doing what they are doing. They allow them to pretend they are visiting a friend, a cousin, a woman of the world. And in turn, they allow you to control the performance. At least for a little while. There is no red light, no signboard. But the moment someone steps through that door, they step into a script. And you, along with every woman in this house, know your lines by heart. By late morning, the rhythm of the house shifts subtly. You can feel it in the creak of the floorboards, in the way footsteps begin to slow, in the hush that settles like a lace shawl across the rooms. Breakfast has come and gone. Linens have been aired. Fires coaxed into fuller flame. And now, without needing to be said, everyone begins preparing for the part of the day where roles must be worn more carefully. You've changed into the midday dress, the one less fussy than the evening gowns, but still presentable. It fits close to the waist, not quite restrictive, and the cotton has been pressed to a smooth finish. Your hair is pinned again, the curls fluffed at the sides for a touch of volume. You check your appearance in the mirror, not out of vanity, but out of strategy. You don't want to startle anyone. You want to be easy on the eyes, approachable, but not needy. Interesting, but not complicated. That's part of the craft, being what the client wants to see, but never more than that. The bell rings once from downstairs, a subtle chime, almost polite. You move without rush, knowing who it likely is. A familiar face, one of the regulars perhaps, with a preferred hour and a preferred manner of greeting. The house works best when things are predictable. There is a kind of choreography to how this next part unfolds. The drawing room has already been prepared fire, at a steady crackle tea poured, and placed at the perfect angle beside the client's seat. The lighting, thanks to the gas lamps, has been adjusted to the soft golden hue that flatters most skin tones. You step into the room, posture aligned, breath even, and something inside you shifts quietly. Not a mask, not quite. More like a soft filter, a tuning of frequencies. He is seated already. Middle-aged, with the kind of face that blends easily into crowds. A bank clerk, you think? Or a civil servant? Somewhere quiet where dust settles and tea is poured precisely at 4. He looks up, gives a small nod. You respond with a gentle glance, calm, unbothered, neither too eager nor too cool. You know how to match temperature. The conversation begins, as it often does, somewhere safely bland. The weather. The train delay. A new pamphlet circulating in Parliament. Nothing that reveals too much. This kind of man doesn't come for drama or for thrill. He comes for the comfort of a ritual. A controlled space. a performance with clear boundaries. In this room, he can speak without interruption, be listened to without judgment, and pretend, if only briefly, that he is not paying for any of it. And in return, you listen. Not because you care particularly about railway tariffs or stamp collecting, but because it is your currency. Your labor is not just of the body, but of the mind, the nodding, the mirroring, the soft chuckle, at just the right moment. These are learned techniques practiced until they feel seamless. This is not a job of indulgence. It is a job of endurance. In Victorian England, especially during the height of the 1860s, women in houses like this were not permitted to be idle. Even if the number of clients was light on a given day, you were expected to be presentable, available, and attentive. No lounging in bed past breakfast, no unruly appearance, no sour expressions. If you weren't with a client, you were helping prepare the rooms, assisting with laundry, or maintaining the sitting area. A well-run brothel functioned not unlike a small hotel, discreet, polished, and obsessively maintained. One mainstream historical fact worth noting: by 1864, the British government enacted the first of the Contagious Diseases Acts, which allowed police to detain women suspected of prostitution and force them to undergo medical examinations without trial and without the same applying to male clients. It was a law meant to protect military men from venereal disease, but in practice, it was one of the earliest forms of state surveillance and control over working women. Brothels that operated discreetly like yours lived under the constant shadow of such inspections. Mrs. Cartwright was careful to keep the house off any official radar. She paid her dues, often literally, to keep the name of the street unspoken in the mouths of the constables. Meanwhile, the quieter brothels like this one, without open signs or window displays, were often considered better houses. Clients paid more for privacy and atmosphere. That, too, was part of your compensation. Not just money, but safety, or the closest thing to it, in a city that didn't really believe you deserved any. There is a small pleasure sometimes in the absurdity of the situation. The man before you, sipping tea and telling you earnestly about the political pamphlet he's read, would recoil at the idea of visiting a bawdy house. But here he is, believing that, because there's no red light, because you pour the tea with grace, because the room smells faintly of roses instead of gin and sweat. This is not quite the same thing. It is. You know that. But it's easier somehow to let him pretend. As for currency, he pays, of course. A small fee to the house, a smaller one directly to you. Some bring extra coins for niceties, some do not. The real payment, though, lies in how they treat the time. Some arrive in silence, use it plainly, and leave. Others dawdle, eager to chat, to unspool stories about their wives, their daughters, their long-dead mothers. You nod. You sympathize. It is not your job to believe them. It is only your job to be believable. Here's a curious tidbit for the day. A few high-end brothels in London, particularly in Covent Garden and Mayfair, were known to stage elaborate themed rooms, including Egyptian tents, mock monasteries, and even a replica of a ship's cabin. All theatrics, of course, designed to give the wealthy elite some illusion of exotic escape. Your house, being more modest, has no such flair. Just clean curtains, thick walls, and furniture that doesn't creak too loudly. You are thankful for that. You prefer your world to be small and knowable. Eventually, the encounter winds down. Not abruptly, he is not unkind, but gradually, like the slow dimming of a lamp. He rises awkwardly. You escort him to the hallway. The air has grown cooler since morning. You note this without comment, simply adjusting the shawl over your shoulders as you return upstairs. He leaves behind a coin, too, perhaps, folded discreetly into a handkerchief. And he leaves behind a scent, a presence that will fade as quickly as it came. You do not dwell on it. You have learned not to, because the bell will ring again. And the day, with all its roles and rituals, still has many hours left to unfold. There's a particular kind of quiet that falls over the house in the early afternoon. Not the hush of sleep or secrecy, but that soft pause after movement, the sigh between acts in a long, slow play. It's the time when no one is rushing, not yet dressing for evening, not yet lighting the lamps. Just a pocket of stillness, like the city itself taking a long breath. You slip out with your shawl tucked neatly over your shoulders, your leather purse clasped under your arm, and your boots tapping a steady rhythm down the worn front steps. It feels good to move, even if it's only down the street. Fresh air isn't always fresh in London, especially not in the winter of 1862, but even the grimy fog feels welcome after hours within the patterned walls of the brothel. The city smells like smoke, and coal horses, and people, and the faintest trace of oranges from the market stalls that refuse to close no matter how dim the day. You pass a row of shops, dressmakers with lace trim on display, a tobacconist, a bookseller whose window you glance into, but never enter. There's a tea room on the corner where proper ladies gather with gloved hands and upright postures. You slow as you pass it, watching the clink of china and the polite laughter behind fogged glass. But your feet do not pause. That place is not for you. It never was. Instead, you turn into a quieter side street and make your way towards the bakery. It's not much to look at, just a squat storefront with a crooked awning and a door that sticks. But the pastries are warm, and the baker's wife always offers a nod of recognition, never a question. You press a coin into her palm, and in return receive a jam tart wrapped in wax paper still warm from the oven. You eat it slowly, standing near the edge of the street where the light slants just right through the coal-darkened clouds. The pastry is soft, the filling sweet, with a sharp tang of strawberry. It tastes better than it should, which is the quiet magic of simple things earned after long hours. And while the tart melts on your tongue, your mind wanders. Just for a minute. You imagine perhaps that you're not in Soho at all, but on the other side of the river, in a respectable quarter. That your skirt is just a bit fuller, your gloves a bit cleaner. That you're not alone, but meeting a friend. That you are expected somewhere later, not paid to be. A day off, a future, a name spoken kindly. But of course, even in imagining, you know the limits of such a dream. It doesn't reach past the next corner. In Victorian society, women like you were often invisible in official records, but hyper-visible in public scrutiny. Respectability was currency more powerful than coin, and once you'd fallen outside, its boundary, even stepping back into a church, could bring stares. In fact, many brothel workers avoided religious buildings altogether, not because they lacked belief, but because the judgment within those walls could be sharper than any street insult. Still, the idea lingers like a scent, faint but persistent. What if it's here in this still moment, that the weight of your life feels both lighter and heavier? You are not starving. You are not in pain. You have coins in your purse, food in your belly, and walls that protect you from rain and cold. That alone is more than many women had. And yet, you cannot walk freely into the world without it pressing back against you. A quirky note from history, some brothels in 19th century London gave their girls designated shopping days, times they could go out in pairs dressed just modestly enough to pass as maids or seamstresses. It was a way to maintain morale, but also a small act of illusion. Out in the streets, you could pretend for a short while that you were just another face in the crowd. You finish your tart and wrap the paper back into your shawl. No crumbs, no mess. The baker's wife doesn't need to see you linger. You nod once more and begin the walk back. By the time you reach the house, the gas lamps are being checked, the windows closed against the early dusk, and the scent of lavender water drifts faintly from upstairs. Evening is coming, and with it, transformation. But for now, you carry the echo of jam and daydreams with you tucked into your chest, like something warm and fragile. And in that small softness, there is a kind of resistance. You have lived another day, and soon it will be time to become someone else again. There's a rhythm to the transformation, one you've performed so many times, it feels more like muscle memory than thought. The afternoon quiet has thinned, replaced by the soft rustle of skirts and the distant clink of porcelain as teacups are cleared. Somewhere upstairs, someone coughs, someone hums, and somewhere below, the low creak of the parlor floorboards signals that the house is beginning its shift into something else, something more polished, more curated, more watchful. You climb the narrow stairs to your shared room again, the air growing warmer with each step as the fireplace has been tended in your absence. On the washstand sits the small basin, half filled with water that's no longer ice cold, but still brisk enough to wake your face. The towel beside it is stiff with use, but it will do. You lean over, splash your cheeks, and watch the droplets bead and run down your reflection in the tarnished mirror. This is where the ritual begins. First, the dress. You unlace your workday bodice and slip into the evening gown chosen for tonight, a rich blue silk that whispers when it moves, clinging just enough to suggest softness without surrender. It is not truly yours. None of them are. They are assigned, maintained, rotated. But tonight, this one is yours to inhabit. You pull it close and fasten it with careful fingers, adjusting the bodice just so. Then the corset tightened by practiced hands. Not to the point of breathlessness, this house prides itself on discretion. Not spectacle, but enough to lift the posture shape, the silhouette draw the eye. It is both armor and costume, a reminder that everything tonight will be equal parts reality and performance. Your hair comes, next rebrushed, pinned tighter, more deliberate. You select one of the house's curled hairpieces, dyed to match your own, and nestle it among the coiled braids. The style is meant to look effortless, like something that fell into place on its own, as if beauty were accidental, not built layer by layer in front of a fogged mirror under dim gaslight. Then, the cosmetics. But not too much. Victorian brothel women, especially those in upscale establishments like this one, were expected to walk the razor's edge between natural allure and refined polish. Rouge too bright was vulgar, too little made you look tired. A dab of rice powder to even the skin, a faint touch of color on lips and cheeks blended with fingertips still bearing the faint scent of lavender soap. Your eyebrows are darkened slightly, your lashes curled with a warmed spoon. Mainstream historical fact. By the mid-19th century, it had become common for respectable society to decry heavy makeup as a sign of immorality. Thus, many brothel workers adopted the barely there approach, enhancing without appearing to. Ironically, it required more time and precision than the gaudy paints once favored by the demi-mondaine of earlier decades. And finally, the perfume. Not the cloying, obvious kind, but something subtler. A faint trail of violet water dabbed behind the ears, at the base of the throat, and along the insides of the wrists. It is both signal and illusion, feminine elegant, and not entirely your own. Some women prefer rose or amber, but for you violet has always felt like a secret, something soft, but unshakable. Your slippers go on last. The soles are thin, nearly worn through, but they're quiet, and that's what matters. The stairs are unforgiving to careless feet. You smooth your skirts, pinch a bit of color into your cheeks once more, and take one last look in the mirror. You look composed. Not radiant, not youthful, not glamorous. Just ready. Downstairs, the parlor has been transformed. The curtains are drawn against the cold, the gas lamps adjusted to emit a warm golden hue, flattering to skin and fabric alike. The fire crackles behind the grate, and the scent of polished wood and candle wax fills the air. The furnishings have been tidied. The cushions fluff the crystal glasses, aligned just so. Everything is designed to make a gentleman feel welcome, without ever asking him to name what it is he seeks, a quirky historical tidbit. In some of London's more discreet brothels, it was customary to arrange the room in a way that mimicked the drawing rooms of middle-class homes, complete with chessboards, newspapers, and sherry decanters. This was not only for ambiance, but to give visiting men the comforting illusion that they were simply calling on a friend. You wait just beyond the threshold, listening to the creak of boots and the low murmur of voices. Your name may be called first or last. It doesn't matter. You are ready, and that readiness is its own kind of ritual. You know how to walk without hurrying, how to stand without stiffening, how to sit without slumping. Every gesture is deliberate but subtle, and inside, you feel still, not calm exactly, but anchored. The hours ahead will be what they are. Some kind, some tedious, some silently endured. But for now, there is this pause, this breath, this moment of readiness where the role is not yet fully donned, but waiting just beneath your skin like a second self. And with that, you step forward into the glow. The blue silk has lost its sheen. The bodice, once smoothed to a flawless curve, now sags just slightly where it was tugged too hard. Your cheeks still wear a trace of rouge, but the warmth beneath it has long since faded. The lavender scent you dabbed so precisely is now mingled with wax sweat and the memory of too many hands. The night has grown old. The lamps are lower now, their glow stretched long and honey-colored across the parlor floor, catching in the crystal glassware and flickering in the folds of curtain. You have smiled until your jaw aches. You have listened and nodded and performed the same act beneath different names, always with that same touch of softness, not too cold, not too eager. Just enough to hold the illusion together. Upstairs again, the room feels still in the way only very late hours can manage. Lily is already there, though you didn't hear her come in. Her corset hangs limply over the chair stockings draped carefully beside it. She lies on her side, facing the wall, her breath slow and even. You don't speak. There's no need. The unspoken truce of exhaustion lies between you both, an invisible line that won't be crossed tonight. You undress in silence, hands stiff with the work of the day. The dress comes off in one practiced sweep, and the pins in your hair are removed with a few well-placed tugs. They clatter softly into the chipped porcelain dish on the washstand. The water in the basin is cold, and the cloth you use to wipe your face rough from overuse, but still, there is a small kind of comfort in it. The smudged mirror doesn't flatter, and maybe that's a mercy. You are not required to look beautiful now. You are only required to be clean enough to sleep. Victorian brothels, particularly those operating under the guise of private residences like this one, rarely had the luxury of full plumbing. A tin basin, a shared jug of water, and perhaps a slop bucket behind a modest screen, those were the amenities. Soap was rationed and towels were reused. Some of the fancier establishments prided themselves on having hot water once a week. That was the high bar. You sit for a moment on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging beneath your weight. The blanket smells faintly of dust and starch. A draft seeps in from the ill-fitted window, and your toes curl instinctively against the cold floorboards. But you do not climb beneath the covers just yet. Instead, you look out through the glass pane, which is fogged at the edges, but still reveals a sliver of the outside world. The gas lamps in the street flicker against the damp air. Somewhere in the distance, a cart rattles by too late to be delivering milk too early to be carrying bread. You imagine it's both. There's a kind of strange hush that arrives at this hour. Not silence, not quite, but a gentle thinning of sound, as if the world itself has curled inward to rest. And in that quiet, the thoughts you have managed to keep at bay all day begin to float upward, uninvited but persistent. You think of other lives, other yous, not dramatic ones, no grand adventures, no duchesses or actresses, just quieter ones. A shop girl, perhaps, or a seamstress again, if the work hadn't ruined your hands. You once fancied the idea of working in a library. Rows of leather-bound books, the smell of paper, and dust, the low murmur of readers at long tables. It felt like something solid, clean, contained. But those lives always end in the same place, don't they? Back here, back in this bed, back in this room where you wake and sleep and wake again wearing a different name and a slightly more threadbare nightgown. A creak from the hallway pulls you back into the moment. Mrs. Cartwright's footsteps measured and faint. She walks the halls at night sometimes. No one knows why. Perhaps it's habit. Perhaps she too cannot sleep. Quirky historical tidbit. Some brothel mistresses were known to patrol their own houses into the early hours, not to catch anyone out, but to maintain an air of omnipresence. It was said to be good for business and better for discipline. One such woman, a certain Madame Lefebvre of Paris, was rumored to sleep only 3 hours a night and kept a bell by her bedside that could summon her to any room instantly. You lie down at last. The mattress is lumpy and the blanket too short, but your body is too tired to argue. Your muscles sink into the rough linen sheets like old stones into water, not gracefully, but completely. The weariness is a blanket of its own, coarser than wool, but just as heavy. Outside the window, the fog thickens. The city beyond fades into shadow. Somewhere a dog barks once then, is silent. The fire in the downstairs parlor gutters then dies. And still, you remain awake. Not because you're waiting for anything, but because sleep for women like you is never just sleep. It's a kind of retreat, a temporary erasure of self. It takes time to slide into it, to lay down not only your body, but the part of you that had to be smiled through, powdered over, and offered up in exchange for coin. And yet, you do drift eventually. You think briefly of the doctor who came earlier in the week, the routine check, the cold fingers, the distant expression. Necessary, they say. Preventative. The cost of being allowed to work. But it left a film on your thoughts, like grease that won't wash off. You remember the way he wrote something in a small leather notebook without meeting your eye. Mainstream historical fact. By the 1860s, under the Contagious Diseases Acts in Britain, women suspected of prostitution could be forcibly examined by a government-appointed doctor, sometimes without consent. These laws were justified as public health measures to protect men from venereal disease, but led to widespread abuse and social protest. Many women saw them as a legal means of humiliation. You exhale slowly. You do not wish to think about that now. Your fingers move gently to your collarbone, tracing the edge of the nightgown. You feel the raised threads where the fabric has begun to fray. It will hold for a few more weeks, probably. You'll mend it just as you mend everything else. Lily stirs behind you, turning in her sleep. Her breathing is uneven, now caught in the edge of a dream. You don't envy her, but you don't pity her either. You both lie here, separate and parallel, like train tracks stretching into an uncertain fog. Close, but not quite touching. Going the same way, but never meeting. The final lamp flickers out downstairs. Silence folds over the house at last. And you no longer resisting, let go. Not all the way. Just enough. Just enough to sleep. You don't remember falling asleep. That's the thing about deep exhaustion. It doesn't ask permission. It just takes you. One breath, two, and then the street outside your window is no longer London's. The fog lifts, and suddenly it smells different. Warmer, heavier, a hint of rosewater and tobacco. The air hums faintly perfumed with candle wax musk, and something sweet you can't quite name. This is not your bed. The linen beneath you is softer, smoother thread count suspiciously higher. You're not in your tiny attic room anymore. Welcome to Paris. Year somewhere around 1722. And you've changed names again, Cherie. You're now a fille de joie, a lady of pleasure, working in one of the more respectable maisons closest along the Rue de Bourbon. It's not the grandest in the city, those belong to the madames, with direct connections to the nobility. But it's reputable enough to attract the powdered wigs and velvet breeches of men who call themselves barons, whether or not they truly are. The walls here are thick, and the curtains heavier than the secrets they've seen. The mirror in the corner is full-length gilded and tilted just slightly downward, designed not for accuracy, but for flattery. You see your reflection in soft morning light, your powdered face slightly smudged from sleep, your shift rumpled but still scented faintly of orange blossom and last night's pomade, your hair styled in careful curls now gently loosening like vines in the summer heat. Everything here is a performance of softness designed to blur the harshness just enough. This is France during the Regency, a time when Versailles excess had begun to trickle down to the city like spilled champagne. The Sun King was gone, his great shadow receding into memory. In his place, opulence still but with less grandeur, more indulgence. Pleasure, in all its forms, had become fashionable. Public morals were a flexible thing, and behind closed doors, especially the velvet-draped ones of a maison closed, they barely applied at all. The maison opens at noon, but your day begins far earlier. Not because you're expected to work, but because there's work to be done to become someone worth paying for. Baths were still a novelty among most Parisians, but here, warm water is drawn every other morning in a copper tub polished bright enough to see your reflection. You wash carefully, avoiding the hair and the face, those will be handled separately. Afterward comes the real labor, the corset, the garters, the lace-edged chemise, and the silk gown layered in shades of pale pink and ivory. Cosmetics has always come last. A little carmine for the cheeks. A lead-based white powder that you try not to inhale too deeply. Then the final touch, a black velvet beauty patch placed just below your lip, meant to suggest flirtation. Mainstream historical fact. In early 18th century France, beauty patches or mouches were not only fashionable, but coded. Their placement on the face conveyed subtle messages. A patch near the eye meant passion, one near the mouth flirtation, on the forehead dignity. Among the courtesans of Paris, mastering this silent language was part of the job. Downstairs, Madame Béliveau is already awake sipping her coffee with 2 sugar cubes, expensive luxuries, both imported. She runs the house like a general, though she speaks like a duchess. No one knows exactly where she came from. Some say she was once mistress to a bishop. Others whisper she once worked the floor herself. Either way, her word is law, and her ledger is gospel. She believes in 2 things above all: discretion and aesthetics. That means no shouting, no vulgarity, and absolutely no unwashed clients. If a man shows up reeking of brandy or worse, he's politely turned away with a card suggesting a bathhouse 3 streets down. The girls joke that she has a better sense of smell than a hunting hound. You believe it. Breakfast is taken quietly at the small table in the salon. Bread rolls butter and something resembling fruit preserves. You spread yours thinly, not out of frugality, but habit. It's odd how the body still remembers hunger, even when the pantry is full. You eat in silence with Sabine, who has been here longer than you. She never speaks at breakfast. Just sips her tea and watches the sunlight crawl slowly across the painted ceiling. In the afternoons, you don't work. Not technically. You read so-write letters for men who pretend they can't spell. You learn music Madame insists on at least 1 song per girl. Some of the others resent it, but you find it oddly comforting. Like practicing an old spell the same notes over and over again until they stop being sound and become something else entirely. Control, maybe. The guests arrive in the evening, never before dusk. They smell of tobacco and cologne and powdered wigs. They come here not just for the obvious, but for the illusion that they are men of taste refined enough to appreciate a well-read woman who can quote Voltaire between sips of wine. They don't want reality. They want a mirror held up just far enough away to blur the flaws. Quirky historical tidbit. Some high-end Parisian brothels employed in-house poets to write verses on behalf of their patrons. A wealthy but inarticulate client could pay extra to have a love poem written in his name, presented with a flourish as if from the depths of his own soul. These poems were often recycled, sometimes appearing only slightly changed between competing houses. Of course, the work itself still happens. Behind the silk beneath the lace, your body is still a transaction. But it's a transaction padded by wine laughter and the kind of courtship that lasts exactly as long as the clock permits. You've learned to recognize the signs when a man will tip generously, when he'll make a mess, when he'll ask to see you again and pretend it means something more. You're no fool. You know what this is. But still, there are nights when it almost feels like theater. You on the stage lit softly by candlelight, and the audience applauding with coin instead of claps. It's strange how far performance can carry you, how it can make the unbearable feel manageable, sometimes even beautiful. Tonight you sing, not for money, just for yourself. A simple chanson you learned as a girl long before this life. Your voice is soft, the room dim, and for a moment, you're no longer here. You're someone else, somewhere else, but only for a moment. Sleep comes in layers now. You drift off, still half-laced into your corset cheek, pressed against an embroidered pillow that smells faintly of violets. The sound of the city seeps in through the closed shutters, hooves on cobblestones, laughter a distant violin. Paris never truly sleeps, but you will. You think as your breathing slows of London, of Lily, of the cold basin water and the cracked floorboards, of a life still happening without you. Or perhaps this was all just a dream within hers. In any case, you rest, and history breathes on. The dream doesn't break, it drifts. Where Paris was velvet and perfume, your world now shifts into silk and stillness. You awaken not with a jolt, but with the slow unfurling of consciousness, like a fan opening in the hand of someone who's been trained to move beautifully. The air is warmer here, thick with incense. Sweet rice smoke clings to the walls. Through the paper screen, you hear the hush of a distant shamisen, a tune half familiar, like something you've never learned but somehow know. It is Japan, the Edo period. You are in Yoshiwara, the famed pleasure quarter of old Edo, what modern maps now call Tokyo. It's the early 18th century, and you once again are not a princess. You are a yujo, a courtesan in the floating world. Your feet are bare, pressed into tatami, woven so tight the seams feel smooth beneath your toes. The morning light seeps through the shoji screen in soft geometric shapes, casting grids of cream and pale gold across the floor. Outside, a servant sweeps the stone path leading to the house's inner courtyard. She wears her hair plain and tied with string, unlike yours, which has been sculpted into a coiled tower of black lacquer and silk threads. It took nearly 2 hours last night, with 2 women working together, and more hair pieces than you'll admit to. Sleeping upright isn't comfortable, but no one asked if it would be. Your day begins not with a splash of cold water, but with tea green strong earthy. You drink it quietly from a clay bowl seated properly, legs folded beneath you. Even alone, there's etiquette to observe. Every gesture is deliberate. The lift of the cup, the tilt of the wrist, the silence between sips. This world thrives on precision. A misplaced glance can carry more meaning than a full sentence. Edo is booming. The city's population has exploded, and with it, the appetite for beauty, performance, and pleasure. Yoshiwara is a walled district isolated by canals and gates, an island of illusion carefully maintained by those who profit from its upkeep. You were sold here perhaps by your family, perhaps by circumstance. But once inside, you trained. For months. Sometimes years. Not only in how to please, but how to be admired. How to walk, laugh, pour sake, compose poetry, and answer riddles with more riddles. Beauty is only one part of the role. Wit timing and emotional choreography make up the rest. Mainstream historical fact. In Edo, Japan, Yujo especially, the elite Oiran courtesans were highly educated and rigorously trained in the classical arts. Many could recite poetry, play multiple instruments, perform the tea ceremony, and engage in philosophical debate. This intellectual polish distinguished them from lower-ranking prostitutes and made them coveted companions for samurai merchants and artists. You are not an Oiran, not yet. You wear the telltale layers of color and silk, but your obi, the wide sash at your waist, is tied at the back, not the front. The front-tied obi is the mark of the Oiran, and with it comes the heavy parade, the clog 6 inches high, and the right to reject a customer outright. You don't have that privilege. Not yet. Your room is small, but perfect in proportion. The futon has already been rolled and stored. In its place, the floor is bare inviting. A single vase holds a plum blossom branch minimalist and deliberate, as if to say, "This is enough." You wash your face from a ceramic basin, then smooth on rice powder pale and dry, and paint your lips in 2 careful dabs of vermilion. No mirror necessary. You've done this so many times, your hands remember even when your mind drifts. Outside, the day unfolds. Customers do not wander in casually. They are announced sometimes hours in advance. Those who can't afford time or elegance visit other parts of the city. Yoshiwara is for performance, not urgency. You prepare not just your body, but your mood. Music helps. You slide open the storage box and remove your shamisen, its skin tight as a drum. You play the tune softly, letting it float around the room like morning fog. Each note has weight. Each pause intention. This is not for entertainment, it's rehearsal for the self. Quirky historical tidbit. Because of the elaborate hairstyles and the weight of the kanzashi ornamental hairpins, some Yoshiwara courtesans use small wooden neck rests to sleep while preserving their styling. These takamakura looked like uncomfortable little stools, and they were. Losing one's hairstyle meant hours of reconstruction and potential punishment from the house mistress. When night falls, Yoshiwara glows. Lanterns line the narrow streets, casting a honeyed light on every painted doorway. It's theater at city scale. You step out not just dressed, but adorned layers of brocade trailing sleeves, patterns of cranes, waves, and moonlit pines. Your feet are steady in the tall Geta sandals, though the height makes you sway slightly, like a boat adjusting to tide. Eyes follow you. Of course they do. You are the star of this floating world, a symbol of unattainable beauty offered briefly for hire. Men perform eagerness as you perform allure. The transaction is silent, but understood they seek escape. You provide the dream. But dreams are heavy. You smile with perfect balance between availability and mystique. You refill the cup just slightly too slowly enough to create tension. You compliment his poem, though you know he didn't write it. You laugh once at something that wasn't meant to be funny. He doesn't notice. He's too enchanted by the choreography to see the mechanics behind it. Later, you return to your room. The wig is removed. The pins unwound. Your real hair flattened from the burden breathes again. You kneel to fold your kimono carefully, smoothing the fabric along the lines your body wore into it all night. The silence feels full, not empty. You've done this hundreds of times, and still each movement feels ceremonial. You don't sleep right away. Instead, you lie still, listening to the distant flutes and drums of a festival you're not attending. You imagine the fireworks rising above the canal, mirrored in the dark water, seen only by the boatman drifting past the gate. Yoshiwara is a cage made of silk threads, soft, flexible, but still a cage. And yet within it, you've learned something essential control, disguised as elegance exhaustion, worn like perfume, and the art of survival with a painted smile. Your breathing slows. Another city, another century, another self. But always the same drifting dream. You drift further east and further back in time. The lacquered walls of Yoshiwara fade behind you, replaced by the golden-orange glow of paper lanterns swaying in desert wind. But you're not in a desert. You're in Chang'an, capital of the Tang Dynasty, heart of the ancient world. And for tonight, the setting of yet another life you didn't ask for. It's the 8th century, and the city breathes poetry. The streets are wide, symmetrical, built in perfect grid lines, stretching further than the eye can follow. Every intersection pulses with life merchants, haggling over silk and sandalwood ox carts, grinding against stone, and musicians plucking soft, otherworldly tones from strange stringed instruments. Somewhere, someone recites a line of verse so beautiful, it makes someone else cry. But not you. You're inside the walls of a pleasure compound, surrounded by draped gauze and carved lacquer. You are not just a woman tonight, you are a painted dream, a courtesan among the most cultured elite in East Asia. This is no roadside brothel. You have been trained to entertain scholars, court officials, visiting envoys from Korea, Tibet, and the Abbasid Caliphate. You've memorized Li Bai's most famous stanzas and can quote Zhuangzi with a tilt of your head that says, "Yes, I know you didn't expect that." Mainstream historical fact, courtesans of the Tang Dynasty, especially in the capital of Chang'an, were often highly educated in music, poetry, calligraphy, and even philosophical discourse. Unlike many later societies, Tang China offered women in certain circles, especially within elite entertainment houses, a surprising level of literary and artistic influence. Some even had their poetry circulated and admired. But don't mistake that for freedom. Your quarters are beautiful, yes. Your robes dyed in expensive mineral reds and celestial blues. You wear your hair in a towering chignon wrapped in gold thread and looped with fresh flowers, even though they'll wilt before night's end. You paint your face with the popular pale rice powder, dot your forehead with a crimson blossom, a cosmetic tradition known as huadian. A small gold leaf sits just above your brow, catching the light when you bow. And you always bow even when you're smarter than the man in front of you. Especially then. No one speaks of your childhood. No one asks how you ended up here. But you remember. You remember the hungry seasons when rice ran out before spring. You remember being noticed how you sang without knowing you were singing. How your hands moved delicately even when scrubbing bowls. A patron noticed. A housekeeper made an offer. A mother said yes. There's no use blaming her. You sleep on silk now. Chang'an is vast, nearly 1 million people at its height. It is the most cosmopolitan city on earth at this time. Persians, Arabs, Indians, and Uyghurs walk its streets wrapped in their own customs, trading their own goods. You sometimes see them from behind your curtain, sipping your bitter tea and pretending not to care. But you do. You always do. Every face is a story you won't get to live. The scholar tonight is from Loyang. He arrives with ink-stained sleeves and a scroll tucked beneath one arm. His voice is soft and measured a little too rehearsed. He asks about your favorite verse and you recite something obscure, something clever. He nods impressed. You are both actors, but you're the one who's memorized all the parts. Quirky historical tidbit. Some Tang courtesans were so skilled in poetry and performance that their verses were recorded in anthologies, though often anonymously. One famous courtesan allegedly wrote a poem so moving during a drinking party that the governor present tried to make her his concubine on the spot. She declined, with a couplet that made everyone laugh except the governor. Your worth here is bound to your ability to enchant without threatening. Too witty and you're dangerous. Too quiet and you're forgettable. There is a delicate space in between where you flourish unseen by history, but unforgettable to the men who pretend they discovered you. Evening settles like a scroll unrolling across the land. The lamps glow with fish oil, soft and flickering. Your robes rustle like leaves as you pass from room to room, stopping to refill cups, to retune the pipa, to add a final dab of rouge to a cheek already flushed. You know where the light falls best in the room. You angle yourself toward it, just enough to highlight the curve of your jaw. Your laughter tonight is real only once when one of the musicians drops a note and blushes like a boy. You allow yourself that. The rest is performance. Later, when the guests are gone and your room is yours again, you remove the ornaments one by one. Each pin, each comb, each jeweled hairstick is a weight lifted from your body and mind. You clean your face with warm water steeped in chrysanthemum. You sit by the open window, listening to a poet stumble home, still trying to remember the line you gave him. He'll get it wrong tomorrow. But that's fine. He'll write it down anyway. You've learned that history forgets the source, but remembers the quote. Your name won't survive the dynasty, but your words might. The air outside is cooler now. The moon rises over the city walls like a silver coin placed gently in the sky. Somewhere, the palace orchestra plays for the emperor's evening wine. Somewhere, a woman in finer robes than yours weeps behind a golden screen. You pull your quilt over your legs and lie back on the polished wooden pillow, stiff but familiar. The rice-scented linens hold the memory of 1,000 quiet nights just like this. As your eyes close, you think maybe. In another life, you were the poet. Maybe in another, you're still the girl with the chipped bowl and the song she didn't know anyone heard. But tonight, you are a courtesan in Chang'an. And you've survived another evening on the edge of art and obedience. Let the silk curtain fall. Let the world forget your name, but not your voice. You barely notice the shift at first. The scent of chrysanthemum fades, replaced by something heavier, amber rosewater and musk. The stiff pillow becomes a cushioned divan, and the distant poetry of Chang'an gives way to the deep lulling tones of a knee flute. Somewhere outside, your awareness geography has turned, centuries have spun, and language has shifted into another melody entirely. You are now in Constantinople, capital of the Ottoman Empire, sometime in the late 1500s. The city is called Istanbul now, but not by everyone. Some whisper its old name with longing, others shout the new one with pride. Either way, it's a place of layers Christian and Muslim East and West wealth, and ruin all pressed into one glittering, breathing, restless mosaic. You live behind a gate. Not just any gate, an enormous one inlaid with mother of pearl and guarded by silence. This is the inner sanctum of the Topkapi Palace, the harem. But don't let the stories fool you. This is not a place of endless pleasure and idle lounging. This is a system, a palace within a palace, a city of women within a city of men. And you're a concubine, not quite a slave, not quite free. Not quite a wife, but closer than most will ever get. It's early morning long before the city stirs. You rise with the others, shoulders brushing in silence. There's a ritual to everything, how you fold your bedding, how you pour your ablutions, how you pin your scarf so that not a wisp of hair escapes. The older women watch. They always do. One mistake, and you're marked not with a lash, but with something subtler exclusion. You've spent years climbing invisible steps. You were brought here as a girl chosen not for rank, but for potential. Light eyes, graceful hands, the way you moved when you danced for the merchant who bartered you like porcelain. You were cleaned, trained, renamed. They taught you to sing Turkish folk songs and recite Persian verse. You learned to walk without sound, to eat without showing your teeth, to pour coffee so smoothly that the foam curled like silk. Mainstream historical fact. In the Ottoman imperial harem, women were trained extensively in court etiquette arts and even diplomacy. Contrary to Western fantasies, it was not simply a space for the sultan's pleasure, but a hierarchical institution often overseen by the Valid Sultan, the sultan's mother, who held considerable political influence. Some concubines, if they bore a son, could rise to immense power. But your position is still precarious. You're part of the inner circle now, housed closer to the imperial apartments. Your robes are of finer silk. You wear delicate slippers with curled toes. On special days, your brows are darkened with kohl and your wrists perfumed with jasmine. But you do not walk alone. Always, you move with the rhythm of the harem, an unseen choreography of rivalry and alliance. Breakfast is quiet. Small bowls of olives, white cheese, simmet bread and tea infused with mint. You sit on cushions arranged by age and proximity to power. The favorite of the sultan, if she's in a generous mood, might offer a date, or a smile, or neither. You learn to read every glance as though your life depends on it. Because sometimes it does. Quirky historical tidbit. The women of the harem often communicated through elaborate symbolic gestures, offering fruit the way a fan was held. The scent of a scarf, all methods to deliver messages without words. There was even a semi-secret language of flowers, called selam, used to send coded emotions within the palace. The silence here isn't empty, it hums. After breakfast, the real work begins. Yes, work. You are expected to embroider, to sew, to play music, if summoned. You practice Arabic calligraphy, even if you'll never send a letter outside these walls. You study court history, even though your own name will never appear in it. These aren't hobbies. They're currency. There are rehearsals, too. You rehearse how to greet a visiting dignitary, if chosen. You rehearse the posture of sadness, the tilt of modesty, the delicate laughter of someone who is never bored. Never angry, never plotting, of course not. Sometimes you're summoned to entertain the sultan. Not for that, well, sometimes for that, but often for something more dangerous, his attention. He's curious today. He wants to hear about a dream you had. He likes your accent. You remind him of someone. Or no one. You speak carefully, your voice sweetened with patience and honey. You quote Rumi. You play the kanun until his eyes close. You do not let your fingers tremble. Later, back in your chambers, you exhale for the first time in hours. The walls don't echo. They absorb. You lean against cool tile inlaid with tulips and vines, trying to remember who you were before all this. The girl who played in dust, who raced boys across a courtyard, who had a laugh louder than her brothers. That girl is gone now. Or she's sleeping. Either way, she won't help you here. It's afternoon now. The light filters through stained glass in rich purples and emeralds. You're summoned again this time by the Valid Sultan. She doesn't speak. She merely looks at you while a servant dresses her hair. She's older than you imagined. Sharper, too. Her rings gleam like small planets. She says, "You have a future here." You do not reply. You bow low and deep. But your heart, your foolish, tired, stubborn heart, beats louder than it should. Because a future here means a life within walls. A path that ends not with freedom, but with influence, perhaps even power. But only if someone else dies first. Evening comes slowly in the harem. There are no clocks. Time moves with the sun and the meals. You dress in twilight colors, indigo, gold, ash rose. Tonight, there's a recital. Girls will dance. One of them will be noticed. One of them always is. You sit on a cushion in the back row, pretending not to care. The girl who dances tonight is younger than you. Her movements are precise, but lack spirit. That will come. Or it won't. Either way, the musicians keep playing. The rhythm never changes. Later, back in your room, you remove your earrings with fingers still tense. The weight of the day pulls at your shoulders. You light a small lamp and heat water for tea. Alone at last, you let your face rest. Not frown, just rest. No one's watching, not tonight. You sip slowly. The tea is bitter like freedom, like memory, like hope. From your window, you can see a sliver of sky. No stars tonight, just clouds heavy with stories that will never be written. You wonder if anyone in the city beyond knows your name, remembers your voice. imagines you as anything more than a whisper behind a veil. You think maybe not, maybe never. But then again, history isn't just what's carved in stone. Sometimes it's silk brushing against stone floors, a glance, a breath held too long, a name murmured once, and never again. Let them write their books. Let them name their sons after warriors. You will be the echo in the corridors, the scent on the scarf, the woman behind the curtain, the one who lived fully, brilliantly, tragically within walls that never knew your full name. You don't hear the creak of silk or the whisper of censored footsteps anymore. Instead, it's the snap of leather, the crunch of dry dirt under boots, and a piano that's just slightly out of tune. You've been spun westward, far west, and dropped like a dusty coin onto a rickety porch in Nevada sometime in the 1880s. It's the Old West, except not the version from saloon shootouts and Sunday afternoon movies. This one smells like whiskey and horse sweat, and your hands already feel chapped just from looking at them. Welcome to Goldfield Population Lawless Optimism, 3 good hats and you. You're not a rancher's wife or a school marm or a fainting lady from back east. No, you work upstairs in the Ruby Lantern, a 2-story saloon that never officially calls itself a brothel, but no one's confused. Your room is over the bar. The wallpaper is faded red curling at the corners from too many hot summers. The bed has iron posts and a thin mattress that squeaks like it's protesting its job. You have a wash basin, a mirror with 2 cracks in it, and a trunk that holds your entire existence. 2 dresses, 1 shawl, a pair of boots, and a bottle of cheap perfume that smells vaguely of lemon regret and hope. It's morning barely. You wake before the heat sets in, before the bar gets noisy again. The sun cuts through the slats in the shutters like it's late for something. You pour water from the pitcher lukewarm with a faint taste of tin and splash your face until the sleep stings its way out. There's no velvet in this life, no court etiquette, no long training in poetry, and modest glances. Here, survival means learning fast, ducking trouble, and making enough in tips to keep your boots risoled. Mainstream historical fact. In the American West during the late 19th century, prostitution was not just common, it was woven into the economic structure of many frontier towns. With male populations vastly outnumbering females due to mining booms, sex work became a practical, if perilous, profession. Many women earned more in a week than a local seamstress might earn in a month, but it came at great personal risk, socially, physically, and legally. You dress quickly. Not in corsets or silks, but in a sturdy bodice and skirt worn soft from use. You tuck your hair up under a ribbon and slip on earrings, tin with red glass meant to pass for garnet. The illusion is good enough for dim lamplight and whiskey goggles. Downstairs, the barkeep Frank is already wiping yesterday's grime from the counter with a rag that was cleaned sometime in 1879. He nods at you without speaking. That's the kind of place this is efficient, dusty, and just polite enough to function. You don't eat breakfast here unless you count a shot of rye and a slice of cold bread as a meal. You do. It's enough to keep your stomach quiet, at least until late afternoon, when you might steal a bowl of stew from the cook if she's in a good mood. You've learned not to ask, just to show up at the right time with the right look. Outside, the town wakes with a metallic clang, someone's hammering a horseshoe back into place, a dog barks, a wagon creaks down the rutted street. The air smells like dust and ambition. You step out for a walk. No one stops you. You nod at the other girls heading back from a night shift at the rival saloon down the road. Some wear feathers. Some wear bruises. No one says much. Quirky historical tidbit. In certain frontier towns, parlor houses were ranked by wallpaper and piano quality. A brothel with real velvet curtains or an upright piano that held a tune could advertise itself as high class. In one Colorado mining town, the fanciest establishment allegedly served oysters flown in on ice in the middle of the desert because nothing said elegance like questionable shellfish in July. You laugh to yourself thinking of that oysters and lace out here among the sagebrush and broken windows. Your own saloon has neither, but it does have Molly. She's the oldest girl still working, maybe 35, maybe 50, it's hard to tell. She keeps a blade in her boot and advice in her cigarette holder. You've learned more from her than from anyone else. Like, don't let them buy your silence and never drink anything you didn't pour yourself. It's near midday now, and the sun has taken its crown. You retreat inside out of the light where the saloon is quiet, but never silent. There's always the fly buzz, the clock tick, the gentle lurch of footsteps upstairs. The quiet hours are for maintenance sewing, torn hems, cleaning up glass, rehemming the curtain that hangs between you and the hallway. Privacy is a kind of luxury here, but illusion is more important. Upstairs, you find your room again. You press a damp cloth to your neck, trying to cool the heat that never really leaves. Then you sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the corner where the ceiling slopes down just slightly, where water once leaked through and left a faint bloom of mold shaped like a horse. You've never told anyone you see it. It's your secret, your private joke, your silent mascot for endurance. Sometimes people ask if they're brave enough how a girl ends up in a place like this. You don't answer. Or you say something different each time. Or you tell the truth and watch them squirm. There's no single story anyway. Some came from farms that dried out others, from factories that broke their backs and paid them pennies. Some ran from men, some ran toward freedom. Most just ran. You ran too. And here you are, with your boots, your tin earrings, your bottle of lemon-scented lies. And you're still here. You look out the window as the shadows stretch. Soon, the men will come. Cowboys, prospectors, card sharks, soldiers. Some are kind, some are drunk, some are dangerous. You can't always tell which until it's too late. You reach for your powder cornstarch mixed with chalk and dab it across your cheeks. Not for beauty, for armor. The hour of dusk doesn't arrive all at once. It crawls. Long shadows from the saloon's porch posts stretch out across the street like arms reaching for anything softer. And then, slowly, the sun slips behind the hill, and the lanterns get lit one by one. The piano starts up something half-remembered and missing a few keys. It's not elegant, but it signals to the town business is open. You're back in your work dress now, the one that shows just enough to suggest, but not enough to promise. Burgundy low neckline trimmed with black lace that's frayed at the cuffs. It's been washed so many times, it's lost the battle against the dust. You move with care. Not seductively, that's not how it works here, but with a practiced ease that says, you're part of the landscape, a fixture of the ruby lantern. And in a town like this, stability is its own kind of power. Men file in first, in twos and threes, then more. Laughter rises like smoke. The clink of glasses, the scrape of chairs, the slap of a poker chip on wood. You take mental notes the way a bartender watches hands too close to the till. The new faces, the regulars, the ones too quiet. Every look is a variable. Every smile is a gamble. Your first customer tonight is a familiar one, a grizzled miner with silver dust ground into his beard and calloused hands like bark. He doesn't talk much, which you don't mind. Some girls find that unsettling, but to you silence is a relief. Less to lie about. You lead him upstairs. You do the job. You breathe through it calmly and quietly. There's no drama here. Just the exchange time comfort and something approximating intimacy, all rendered in soft lighting and short duration. He leaves a silver coin and a nod. There are worse ways to earn a living. And much worse men. Back downstairs, Molly is perched on the edge of the bar nursing a beer and a black eye she swears came from a doorframe. She winks at you and says, 2 more hours, and the night's halfway civilized. You smile. That's about as optimistic as anyone gets around here. Later, a soldier comes in, not from town passing through. His uniform is clean buttons shining in the gaslight. He's young, too young, nervous in the way that says this might be his first time, or maybe just the first time he's had to pay for it. He's polite, almost painfully so, tries to ask about your real name. You steer the conversation away, not out of cruelty, but kindness. for both of you, because names make things stick. And nothing here sticks unless you let it. The hours blur. Music loops, voices blend. Somewhere in the back, someone knocks over a lamp, and for a moment, the whole room flares with drama, but nothing burns, and life resumes. The air thickens with sweat whiskey perfume. You breathe it all in and exhale without thinking. By midnight, the place thins out. The winners leave early, the losers linger. You're tired, but not done. One more customer, maybe two. Then you can lock your door, unpin your hair, and let your shoulders fall. Your last visitor of the night is a man who smells like saddle leather and pipe smoke. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't pretend. And you don't offer anything more than what's required. Some encounters are mechanical. That doesn't make them worse, just simple. When he's gone, you wash quickly with a cloth dampened in lukewarm water. You check your arms for bruises, none this time. Good. You change into a cotton shift, sit at the edge of the bed, and eat the last bite of a biscuit saved from earlier. You've made it through another night. Not glamorous, not gentle, but intact. Mainstream historical fact. Many frontier sex workers had no madam or brothel owner. They rented their own rooms and operated independently, giving them more control than their counterparts in eastern cities or Europe. But that autonomy came with vulnerability. Violence was common. Law enforcement often looked the other way, unless a crime made too much noise to ignore. Despite their marginalized status, some women saved enough to retire, buy property, or even open their own businesses, though these stories were rarely told. You lie down, stretching muscles that ache more than you let on. Your feet throb. Your back tightens. You've learned to ignore it. The body becomes background when survival is the headline. From your bed, you can hear Molly still laughing downstairs. A couple of girls are clinking glasses. Frank is shouting something about closing early. It's all distant, but oddly comforting. Noise means life. Still turning. Still here. You close your eyes. Quirky historical tidbit. In certain Western towns, the local prostitutes were among the first to fund public projects, schools, churches, even street lighting. In Helena, Montana, the ladies of the night were known to donate more regularly to charity than some of the town's wealthiest businessmen. One madam even helped finance a public library. You wonder, as you drift toward sleep, how the history books will remember this place, this life, this work. Probably they won't, at least not truthfully. They'll call it sordid, or sinful, or romanticize it into something it never was. But you were here, real, working, watching the world through lace curtains and clouded mirrors. And for tonight, that's enough. The coal fire has long since gone out, leaving a soft chill on the floorboards. You can feel it even through your stockings, as you rise, moving slowly across the room to pull the curtains aside. It's morning again, or what counts for it, in London's endless gray. The light outside is pale and sluggish, as if it too would rather stay in bed. But the city doesn't sleep long, and neither do you. You glance toward the street, quiet for now. A milk cart passes, its wheels creaking like tired bones. A boy with ink-stained fingers darts past, slapping thick bundles of newspaper onto doorsteps, the pages already damp from the fog. You know what's inside without reading it. Some lurid tale, no doubt. A woman's body found in a back alley. Another cautionary story to remind readers that sin has consequences, and women like you are either victims or villains. No in between. You've read those stories before, or had them read aloud, as not all the girls here can. The headlines are always the same. Fallen woman murdered by jealous lover, innocent girl tricked into life of vice brothel raid uncovers unspeakable scenes. You've heard the gasps, the clucks of sympathy from respectable ladies over tea. Poor thing, they'll say, if only she'd made better choices. But none of them ever ask what choices there actually were. The truth, as you know too well, doesn't fit into a headline. You make the bed, slowly smoothing the sheets, fluffing the thin pillow. brushing off a faint trace of ash from the fireplace. It's not your bed, not really, but you keep it like it is. Order is comfort. Ritual is a kind of defense. The morning routine resumes, like clockwork. Water from the pitcher, still cold, still metallic. A dab of rose water behind each ear. You dress for the day, not for glamour, but for decency. A work dress, modest, durable, functional. You tighten your corset by feel fingers pulling the laces with practiced strength. Over the years, you've developed a tolerance for the pressure. Some women faint. You find it grounding. At least, it's a pain you chose. You think about what Lily said last night. That story in the paper, the one about a girl they all knew once. She hadn't lasted long. Some scandal, some man, some bad night that turned worse. The papers called it a tragedy, but made it sound like entertainment. A little horror before breakfast. Mainstream historical fact. Victorian newspapers were notorious for sensationalizing crimes involving sex workers. The infamous Jack the Ripper murders of 1888 are the most well-known example. 4 of his victims were prostitutes, and the media frenzy that followed turned their deaths into gothic spectacle. The real women, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, and Catherine Eddowes, were rarely remembered for their lives, only their ends. This kind of reporting wasn't unique. Across the era, sex workers who met violence were more often turned into symbols than mourned as individuals. You brush your hair in long, even strokes, watching your reflection in the small mirror. It's warped at the edges. Makes your face look strange if you tilt your head too far. But there's something comforting in the distortion. It reminds you that reality isn't always what people think they see. In the parlor downstairs, someone has already started tidying. You hear the thump of cushions being fluffed, the soft chime of glassware being arranged. The house is quiet, but awake. It always is on alert, like a cat poised to pounce. You walk the hallway in silence, passing closed doors behind which other lives are being carefully prepared. There was a time early on when you wondered whether you'd grow used to the duality being a person and a persona at once. But now you know better. You haven't grown used to it. You've just become skilled at ignoring the friction. You pass the sideboard where a few books are stacked. Some are romance novels, cheap things with fraying spines and crumpled pages. Others are more serious, an old copy of Jane Eyre, a collection of sermons, even a well-worn poetry volume. You don't read much anymore, but you still like to flip through them. There's a kind of escape in the words, even when they sting. One of the books has an inscription in the front, "To Mary from E.H. Christmas, 1861. The handwriting is careful slanted. You've never figured out who Mary or E.H. were? Probably long gone. But the gift remains. So does the story. Quirky historical tidbit. Some Victorian brothels kept small lending libraries for their workers, collections of donated or secondhand books, ranging from religious tracts to novels by Dickens or Austen. Literacy among sex workers varied widely, but reading aloud was a common communal activity. One madam was even known to host Sunday evening poetry circles, where the women read Shelley and Tennyson between clients. You pick up the poetry book and carry it to the window. Outside, the fog is lifting, and the city reasserts itself with noise and motion. Carriages rattle. A bell tolls the hour. Life resumes its usual volume. And in the middle of it all, you remain. Not scandalous, not sinful, just surviving. And that's not a headline, but it's the truth. Downstairs, the clock ticks in steady rhythm. You know it well by now. It's one of those large walnut-frame mantel clocks that chimes with a soft, deliberate authority. Not like the church bells outside, bold and godly. This one is quieter, personal. It reminds you that time passes even when no one's watching, even when no one remembers your name. You join the others in the sitting room. Emily is mending a hem with a focused brow. Lily sips her tea, eyes fixed on a distant nothing. No one speaks. The silence isn't cold. It's lived in, comfortable like a shared quilt. Everyone's tired, but not just from the work. It's the performance, the maintaining of that delicate line between real and unreal that leaves you hollow in the marrow. In recent months, there's been more talk of reform. Parliament churchmen, respectable ladies with ribbons in their hats, they all have thoughts on your life. They propose rescue homes, moral instruction, hard labor in exchange for salvation. Some even write pamphlets with titles like How to Redeem the Fallen Woman, as if redemption could be slathered on like butter. You once saw one of those homes. Gray brick iron gate barbed windows. A girl you knew went there. She came back, thinner, quieter eyes like shuttered windows. She never spoke of what happened inside. Mainstream historical fact. In the mid-19th century, efforts to reform prostitutes were widespread across England. One of the most prominent examples was the establishment of the Magdalen Asylums institutions, meant to rescue fallen women through religious discipline and manual labor. While some women entered willingly, often out of desperation, many were coerced or sent there by courts or families. The conditions were strict: no speaking during meals, no contact with the outside world, and rigid religious routines. Though couched in charity, these homes were often more punitive than redemptive. You stretch your arms above your head bones, clicking gently, and return the poetry book to its place on the shelf. Someone's tucked a dried daisy between the pages, pressed flat like a forgotten sigh. You don't remove it. A memory returns unbidden, one of the newer girls asking if the stories were true. Do they really paint the walls with blood? She'd asked, eyes wide from something she'd read in one of the illustrated crime sheets. You'd laughed softly. No, darling. They use wallpaper. Usually floral. You thought it was a funny answer at the time. She didn't. There's a kind of absurdity to it, all the way the outside world imagines your life as some constant swirl of velvet and sin and scandal. But it's far more mundane, far more human. Most nights you're just trying to keep your stockings from sagging and your tea from going cold. That said, there have been moments, odd ones. A client who brought a parrot in a cage and asked you to read poetry to it. Another who insisted you address him as Lord Gooseberry. One woman swore she'd only sleep on the floor because the beds were too Catholic. You never figured that one out. Quirky historical tidbit. In Victorian London, it wasn't uncommon for sex workers to encounter clients with unusual fixations, what we'd now call kinks, though they were rarely named as such then. One documented brothel ledger included a list of odd requests ranging from to be served tea while under the table to lady must speak in Latin. Brothel madams often kept track of such preferences with practical if discreet efficiency. You glance again toward the clock, still ticking, still moving forward like you 1 minute at a time. No one tells you this, but you begin to suspect that survival is its own kind of rebellion. The world expects women like you to disappear, to fade into alleyways' cautionary tales and moral statistics. But every day, you get up, pull on your corset, and face the world with your back straight, and your wits about you is a quiet refusal. Even now, even here, your life is still yours. Upstairs, someone begins humming low, sweet tuneless. It winds through the stairwell like a wisp of smoke. You close your eyes, let the moment hold, and as the day edges toward evening again, you rise, straighten your skirt, and prepare, because there's always another act. And you, my dear, are still on stage, but not for their applause, only for your own quiet dignity. Evening folds itself around you like a shawl. Not one of those soft lavender-scented ones that wealthy ladies keep for garden walks, but a real working woman's shawl, worn thin at the edges, smelling faintly of coal smoke, and the oil you used to rub into your scalp last week. The lamp's been turned low. Someone has drawn the heavy curtains, and the parlor's warmth now belongs solely to those who remain. The fire hisses gently. A teacup clinks. Footsteps soft and slippered come and go without urgency. No more guests tonight. And still you are here, You lean back into the cushions of the old settee, stuffing lopsided upholstery faded where countless bodies have rested before. Your hand, half-conscious, rubs the crease of your wrist, where the faint scent of lavender lingers. Not the real expensive kind, but the cheaper stuff mixed with vinegar and dreams. But it's your lavender, your ritual, a signal that the day has ended, and that the person you perform, the polished, accommodating, ever-poised woman, is off duty now. Lily is already upstairs. Emily, too. You hear faint sounds, rustling fabric, the low creak of a floorboard, a gentle cough. Even your body knows what time it is. Your spine slowly uncoils. Your feet ache with a memory of boots long since removed. Your belly not empty, but not full, rests in uneasy peace after the meal of bread broth and quiet. There's no show to put on anymore. Mainstream historical fact. Most brothels in mid-19th century London operated much like private boarding houses, with strict routines, internal rules, and hierarchies. The women who lived there often referred to each other with a strange mixture of camaraderie and caution. Some bonded like sisters, others kept to themselves, but it was rare even in this shared profession to find someone who truly knew your whole name, your past, your story. Names in many houses were chosen or assigned. Rose, Dolly, Pearl aliases that offered both anonymity and character. You could vanish and reappear anew simply by changing what people called you. You never chose a name like that. You kept Mary, common, unremarkable, the kind of name no one looks twice at. But tonight, alone in the soft hush of the parlor, it feels like a small act of rebellion. To keep something for yourself, even if it's just a name, you rise slowly because your knees don't like cold evenings and begin the familiar ritual of closing down the room. Straighten the cushions, stack the books, snuff the extra lamp. You smooth a wrinkle in the tablecloth that no one else will notice. It's a strange kind of dignity, but you've found that these small acts of order help you feel more like a person and less like a role. Out in the street, a carriage rolls by wheels clicking against cobblestone. Somewhere, a man is shouting at his dog. A baby cries, muffled behind walls. The world continues. There's an old clock in the hall near the stairs. It's tall and thin with brass numbers rubbed nearly to invisibility. You pass it every night. Sometimes, you touch its side lightly without thinking. You did that once and noticed the wood was warmer than expected. Ever since, it's felt like a sort of marker, a place to say, yes, I made it through another day. Silly, maybe, but not everything has to make sense. Quirky historical tidbit. One famous London brothel reportedly had a parlor pet, a tortoise named Beatrix, who wandered freely among the furniture and was said to enjoy sitting near the fire. Customers found it charming, and the madam swore the creature brought good luck. Another house kept a songbird in a gilded cage, trained to sing whenever someone entered the room. Tiny things, bits of whimsy in a world that otherwise ran on performance and coin. There's no tortoise here, of course, but someone once left a little china cat on the mantel. No one knows where it came from. It just appeared one day. Now it stays. You touch its ear as you pass. Upstairs, the bedroom welcomes you with a kind of worn quietude. The wallpaper still curls at the corners. The water in the jug is still cold. The sheets, though, changed just yesterday, already smell faintly of sleep and skin. There's a hole in your stocking. You pretend not to notice. You lower yourself onto the edge of the bed, not quite ready to lie down, not quite ready to think. You sit there, in your underthings, corset, loosened hair partly down, and listen. You used to be afraid of silence. Now you crave it. This isn't the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. It's not sterile or suspicious. It's the deep kind, the full-bodied hush that arrives after you've said everything that needed saying, and no one demands anything else of you. It's not lonely. It's earned. You remember once in your seamstress days working in a cramped workshop with 20 other girls all hunched over needle and thread. The air was filled with coughs, mutterings, fabric dust, and the constant scratch of scissors. And always, the matron shouting faster, faster, faster. This silence is sweeter than any music. Outside, it begins to rain. The soft kind, a whisper against the glass. You pull the blanket over your legs, thin as it is, and lie back. One arm behind your head. Breathing in, breathing out. You don't sleep yet. But your thoughts begin to soften at the edges. You wonder what your mother would think if she saw you now. Would she recognize you? Would she ask if you're happy? Would you lie? No, not lie. Just edit. You'd say, I have a roof, I have food, I'm not alone, and that would be true. Somewhere beneath your pillow, tucked between fabric and hope, is a small scrap of paper. Just a line from a poem copied by hand. You don't need to read it again, you know it by heart. But just knowing it's there gives you something. Something unnameable, but steady. You roll to your side. The rain keeps falling. And now, finally, you feel the gravity of sleep begin to pull. You're not done yet, not entirely, but almost. You must have dozed off for a moment. The kind of light sleep where you're not quite sure if time passed or not. Your eyes flutter open to nothing in particular. Just the faint glow of the embers in the hearth below, the soft weight of the blanket over your legs, and the rhythmic tapping of raindrops outside the window. You're still here, still Mary, still breathing. And that in itself is something. You slowly brush your hair 100 strokes if you follow the old wives' tale, but really, who's counting? The bristles tug gently at your scalp, and the repetitive motion is almost hypnotic. You used to think brushing your hair was a vanity. Now you know it's something else entirely. A ritual. A way to tell your body, the day is over now. You did what you had to do. You can rest. You fold your stays neatly at the foot of the bed. Set your shoes side by side beneath the chair. These little acts of order of care are how you reclaim something for yourself. In a world where so much is performed for others, every glance, every step, every smile, these are your moments of control. Small, quiet, real. There are no stories tonight, no scandals to giggle over, no whispered gossip. Just the hush of late night and the sound of rain kissing stone. And you think maybe this is what peace looks like in your world. Not joy, not comfort, not even safety, just the absence of needing to be someone else. Mainstream historical fact. By the 1870s, many London brothels were already in decline as public morality campaigns intensified. Religious groups and reformers pushed for laws that criminalized sex work under the guise of public health and order. This culminated in the Contagious Diseases Acts, which subjected women often forcibly to medical examinations, while their male clients faced no such scrutiny. The laws were later repealed after widespread protest, but their legacy lingered suspicion shame and a lingering public belief that only one side of the transaction deserved punishment. You lie there, your mind drifting through such facts, not as a historian, but as someone living beneath them. You were never asked what you thought of those laws. No one came to your door with a pamphlet or petition. You were just observed, judged, filed away. But you weren't a disease. You were a person. And you still are. Somewhere beyond the foggy panes of the bedroom window, a horse's hooves echo on wet cobblestone. Someone late returning home, or leaving someone else's. It doesn't matter. The night belongs to no one, and everyone at once. The walls are thin, and you hear Lily turning in her bed across the hall. A soft sigh, then stillness. You imagine her curled like a comma hair in a braid breath, even and slow. She sometimes dreams out loud. Last week she muttered something about a pink parasol and a garden party. You hoped she made it there in the dream, with tea and biscuits and no one asking anything of her. You think again of the word unwritten. How fitting it is. Not erased, not forgotten, just not recorded, not seen as worth noting. The history books don't have space for women like you. They tell of kings and queens, wars, and treaties' names etched in stone. But your name, Mary, exists in linen washed by hand, in the scuff marks on the stair, in the way you made guests feel seen without ever being seen yourself. Quirky historical tidbit. In one of the more peculiar quirks of brothel culture, some Victorian madams encouraged their girls to keep personal diaries, not to record feelings, but client habits. Likes, dislikes, favorite topics of conversation. It was considered a house ledger of charm. Some of these notebooks, oddly preserved, now sit in archives and private collections filled with snippets like Mr. Harris prefers red ribbons or Mr. W dislikes talk of politics before port. You never kept one. You remembered with your body instead. The way someone's hand twitched when nervous. The scent of bergamot that meant someone had borrowed their wife's perfume. The way a coin felt warm when pressed into your palm too long. It's late now. And for once, there's no need to rehearse or remember. No need to plan tomorrow's dress or guess who might knock or wonder if the coal will last another day. Just sleep. You let the weight of the day drift from your limbs, one thought at a time. The small blister near your toe will be better by morning. You'll mend that tear in your chemise after tea. Maybe it won't rain tomorrow. Maybe it will. None of it requires your attention now. Because, in this moment, there's nothing else to be. No act to perform. No version of yourself to shape for anyone's gaze. You are just you. A woman. Unwritten, yes, but real. And so, you close your eyes and sleep. Let this moment stretch, long and soft and quiet. No more roles, no more rooms to tidy, no more faces to read or charm. You've crossed the threshold of this long imagined day and come out the other side, still breathing, still human. And perhaps now, with eyes closed and blankets drawn, you can rest in the knowledge that even unrecorded lives mattered, that dignity can survive behind closed doors, that you and all your quiet endurance belong in the memory of history, whether or not it wrote your name down. The rain outside has faded to mist. The fire, even in imagination, has settled into soft red coals. The floorboards no longer creak. The city, in all its chaos, has stepped back. Just for now. You are safe here. This story was never meant to be loud. It was meant to be true. You were Mary. And today, you lived a full day in a forgotten life. You worked. You hoped. You endured. And now, you let go. No need to hold the world together anymore. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. Let your mind fall quiet. Sleep comes slowly, gently, like silk sliding from your fingertips. Sleep now. Sleep well. You are not forgotten. You are home.